the hockey culture really cultivated a lot of drinking in my life. It was win or lose, we booze. By 2006, after hockey was over and I was well into organized crime, the coping mechanism for the anxiety, the depression of not making it to the National Hockey League led me into even a darker valley of painkillers, cocaine, MDMA, heroin, mushrooms, you name it, I did it. 3 days, 4 days, 5 days sometimes. It was never just one day. And a good friend of mine who I was with, I woke up and he was sitting beside my bed. And he said, "We got serious problems here." 2 days later, I ended up at my first AA meeting.
All right, what's going on, everybody? That was tonight's guest, Ryan Phillips. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks, coming at you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Treaty Number 6 territory, and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. Before we bring in Ryan, I just want to remind you to stay to the end for a peek at next week's guest, family member of someone who uses drugs, Missy Hume. You won't want to miss that powerful conversation. The link to her talk is in the description of this video. Let's bring in Ryan. Ryan, how are you?
Doing very well. Thank you very much. Very appreciative to be here and speaking to you and a great audience this evening.
Yeah. And I have to apologize for bringing you in a little bit early. I'm a toddler at the wheel of a freight train sometimes, and I forget to say things. So my apologies. So thank you for bearing with me, and thank you for sticking around. I appreciate that very much.
All good. All for a good cause.
Yeah. So is there anything that you would like to say tonight before we jump in?
For anybody out there suffering in silence in any way, that's really having a difficult time out there. There's so many people. I'm one of them. I struggle every day with anxiety, depression, mental health issues, addiction stuff, There's always somebody that will listen, and I'll listen. Hit me up on Instagram or something like that. Get my handle, and maybe we can get you into a safe space where you feel okay and are able to get the right help because you deserve it.
Awesome. All right, well, let's jump in.
This is Hard Knox Talks.
Okay, before we jump in, I just want to let our viewers and listeners know that tonight's live production is premier sponsored by Prairie Sky Recovery Centre in Leipzig, Saskatchewan, and we're going to hear more about them in just a little bit. But first, Ryan, we heard a little bit about you in your clip there at the beginning. But, there's also another layer to this in that you're you're trying to get centered. Hey, it's screwed up. It's the opposite way that you think it is.
There we go. Good.
There it is. Yep, we're good. So I'm glad. Thank you for fixing that, because it would have driven my OCD absolutely mental for the whole show.
You got OCD too, eh?
Oh, is it obvious?
It takes one
just
to know
a little
one,
bit.
Right?
Yeah. So anyways, there's a whole nother layer to your story, and we'll get into your story. But first, I want to make sure that we bring awareness to you have a loved one who is struggling, and you wanted to really make sure that we talked about that a little bit. So why don't we talk a little bit about what it's like to be a family member of someone who's using substances?
Well, I'm the very blessed father of a wonderful 23-year-old. She'll be 24, God willing, on July 10th of this July. And unfortunately, she's been missing for almost 3 weeks. And this is the longest that she's been missing. She relapsed after 2.5 years of sobriety, drug addict, methamphetamines, cocaine, fentanyl. She's never been a drinker. She's down in the United States, in Wichita, Kansas, which is they have the highest crime rate per capita in the United States of America. Mm-hmm. And, I was there maybe about close to 4 months ago. And, I saw, the pangs of addiction at the utmost of brutality. I literally felt like I was in the belly of Satan. It was that bad.
So just like on the streets around you, like when you were going through the city, or what do you mean?
I got a hotel and I expected to be there only for a few days, as she agreed to go to a drug treatment center for human trafficking and substance abuse. And she'd been down the rocky road with gang members and whatnot on the street. A whole different animal.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 days led into 6 days, and it took me actually having to leave there, come back to Canada, and the very next morning she agreed to go. Everything was rolling pretty swell, and she was getting healthy, getting a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And just out of nowhere, about just over 2 months in to her stint there, it came to quite the surprise. She left the treatment center,
Yeah.
and it was just a tremendous blow to the whole family. And her mother and I obviously were not together, but everyone was just devastated. She went home for about a week, and she left, and we haven't heard a word from her for. It's been around 3 weeks. It's been very, very difficult sleeping at nights. And I realized, that's what I did to my parents. Mine was drinking and drugging.
Mm-hmm.
But, back in those days, the fentanyl issue wasn't as prevalent as it is now.
Yeah.
And I've had to kind of come to grips with the fact that I may never see my daughter again. And that's been, a huge emotional roller coaster that I've had to go through in the last, especially the last week, being like, she's going to show up. She's going to make a phone call. And, it's just one of those things where I realize now how the family is impacted by addiction, probably even more so than the person that's actually using the substances at the time.
I've heard that said before. I've heard that said
Yeah.
before, where the family gets sicker than the person that's using. So when you had, like, you mentioned that she had 2.5 years. Now you have like a bunch of years strung together, 7 years. So when she was in her recovery, she was moving towards a safer life and all of these things. Were you involved with that? Like, did you become?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that must have been were you apprehensive at first? Like when she first entered recovery, were you like, oh, this ain't going to work? Or what was that like?
She hit such a bottom. It was actually, she gave birth to my granddaughter almost 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, she actually died while having birth on the side of the road. She was actually giving birth. And, crazy story. My daughter's been in the psych ward 26 times. She's, tried to commit suicide 4 times. It's been a really crazy ride with her. And, when she, it was, the saving grace was her having that child. It gave her an opportunity to, have a purpose, being a mom. And sobriety wasn't really an option for her. It was, you don't get sober, you're not going to see your child. And she wasn't able to see her kid for the first 6 months. She had to, urine samples, you name it. She had to go through all kinds of hoops of, living a clean life in order just to see her daughter again. Yeah. So, 2.5 years of sobriety, sustained good sobriety. She was really on track. I was so proud of her, especially through the pandemic where addiction was just skyrocketing.
Man, that was a nightmare for so many of us. I remember going through that. I already had a little time under my belt when the pandemic hit. And I was like, man, I don't know how anyone is going to get sober in this, with meetings shutting down and services shutting down and nobody's seeing anyone face to face. That was a nightmare. So, but anyways, so you have this lens as a parent and knowing what your actions may have done to your parents. Why don't we go back a little bit and tell us a little bit about how you got started drinking? Was there a lot of drinking at home?
No, there wasn't. I mean, look, I come from a big family and they like to have a good time. My mom and my dad, I obviously skipped a generation or two because my mom and dad, they can take it or leave it. They can have 3 or 4, put it down. It's not like I haven't seen my parents drunk before. but far from having any issues. I think my dad might have smoked pot a little bit back in the 60s and 70s, but yeah, there was alcohol always around, but I was the guy who was always overdoing it. But that wasn't until after my 16-year-old season playing hockey. I left home at 16 to pursue an NHL hockey career. And that's when I saw, big league addiction, so to say, at its highest form. I drank to fit in. I drank to soothe the pain of being away from home, trying to adjust to a new school, a new team, a whole different lifestyle that I thought was going to be completely different. So my dream really turned into a complete nightmare, so to speak.
Yeah.
Everything that I thought I wanted, it just, God had a different plan, I guess, but, no regrets. I was definitely taught what to do and what not to do in the arena of hockey culture. That definitely, it's something I look back on now. It seems like it was a long time ago, but it's, the memories are still very fresh. But, being forced to drink, all the initiations that went behind all, the scenes that people don't really see, that don't, it's a beautiful game, but behind that beautiful game, we're commodities that can be easily replaced. It doesn't matter how good you are, you sustain an injury, you go wayward on the wrong path and start drinking and using drugs. You got an issue, you got off ice issues. You get shipped off, traded. You never know. So that was me. I got hurt, and to mask the pain, hang out with the older guys and be accepted. I drank and I drugged and I did what every painkiller and thing out of the. I mean, I was a gong show.
Did your drug use have anything to do with the reason why you stopped playing hockey?
I actually, the injuries and the adversities played a big part into me not playing as far as I could go. When I was 22, actually I was 23. I was playing in Topeka, Kansas, in the Central Hockey League, and at the age of 20, I'd already been introduced to the BC bud boom, which was, shipping large amounts of marijuana across the border.
Now, how did that happen? Like, so, I mean, it sounds to me like you grew up in a family that, didn't really need money, right? Like, did you grow up around a lot of money?
I mean, we were a middle-class family.
Okay.
I never was, I never went without, and but money was never like the forefront of my attention. I just love playing hockey and being around positive, good people. Just sports was all that I really did in my life. Sports, and I love to draw as well. Love arts and just anything that would keep my mind busy and that I enjoyed. And I don't know, life just took a real different turn.
Like, I'm just.
I went to a bar one night with my brother. I was 19, just about 20, and at this nightclub where I was meeting one of my good buddies, just so happened his brother had just started this shipping marijuana across the border. It was the new thing, and it was accepted in BC. But down in the States, it was highly illegal. This is all before legalization. And I just fell on my lap. Next thing I know, I went from having a landscaping job in the summer to, starting to orchestrate large amounts of BC bud going across the border, and planes and helicopters, hiking trails.
Did it feel wrong? Like, did you feel like you were doing something wrong, or were you like, this is awesome? Like, was it glamorous?
It was glamorous. I have to tell the truth. The truth is that I never saw money like that before in my life. Hundreds and hundreds, then millions of dollars at a time of, hard cash in $10,000 stacks of hundreds and whatever. It was like, it was literally like winning the lottery every time you sent a load across the border of marijuana. I never sold drugs or never sold marijuana in Canada. Everything went across the line. And, I never thought, I was like, oh, this is just a plant. It's just weed. it's kind of like that movie Blow. Literally,
Yeah.
that was my life, except it was marijuana.
Yeah.
And
Did you run
all
out
I
of
knew
did you
was
run out of rooms to put your money in?
yes, I did.
You did.
Dad couldn't find enough room in the backyard to bury it, and
Dad?
then I had
Did
to
you just
put.
say dad?
Yeah, yeah. Dad didn't like doing it, but Dad he buried a lot, and I don't know. sometimes
Could
I
I
wonder
just
if
say,
there's any
wow?
bucks there still buried in the backyard.
Yeah,
But
just glazed over that.
Just
Hey,
like
well,
laugh.
dad just burying in the backyard.
yeah, so I mean, it was just one of those things. I mean, my luck came. It ran out in year 2002. Hockey hockey wasn't paying the bills, and I could make more money doing what I was doing than most NHL hockey players were doing.
Yeah.
And I landed myself in a federal penitentiary down in the United States for conspiracy to import in 2002. And, I didn't see the light of day for 500 days. And, a far cry from playing in front of 15,000 fans. And now you're,
Yeah.
in a maximum federal penitentiary. It was a blow to the ego, a blow to the family.
Yeah.
And just, it was something that I never saw coming, but it definitely, it humbled me to the core later on in life to realize how important your freedom really is.
Something
And,
that
I didn't become a big good boy right away. I got out and I was angry. I was upset. They told me that I had a lifetime ban, that I would never be allowed back in the United States again. And, my daughter was down there. I played hockey down there. So that was like, this is the end of it for me. I'm done.
Yeah.
And, my addiction went through the roof. I had almost, 500 plus days of sobriety when I was in jail. And first night I got out, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll again.
Time to celebrate.
Packing my nose full of cocaine and excessive alcohol abuse. And 3 days later, I was shipping weed across the border again. And, that went on until about 2008. So there was a good 6 years of me being not running like a straight fish, so to speak. I wasn't swimming straight.
Yeah.
And, like I said, I was angry, and, I was like, well, I'm not going to do anything myself now. I got all these new connections that I made in jail. So, the business went to a next level, and, the rest is history. I mean, God.
So it wasn't jail. It wasn't jail that brought you into recovery. Then you went out for another 6 years. You kept doing it. So if it wasn't jail and you kept selling and kept partying and kept doing all the things, what was it? What was it that finally brought you into recovery?
Well, I had been going very hard with the booze, the blow, and the MDMA primarily. And I remember being out for about 3 days, and one of the guys that I was rocking and rolling with, we were at my condo at the time. He couldn't sleep. I passed out, and I remember waking up, just how you feel after a run, and he's like, we got serious problems, man. We need to go. We need help. And I was like, I agree. And I thought AA was for guys that were on the street with a paper bag, but not the case. And I remember I was like, I got to sweat this out before we do anything. And I remember being in my sauna in my building, just sweating all the stuff out of me. I felt horrible. It was like being wrung out with by a. It was brutal.
Yeah.
It was coming out of me like battery acid. And a few days later, I was at my first AA meeting, and I remember they asked me to share, and I didn't realize we only had 5 minutes, and I started telling my whole life story. And they're like, what?
The newcomer. Yeah. I've been there.
Yeah. But
So, but when you walked in, so I like to try to understand how people feel when they make the decision, right? So like when your friend comes in, like, was that your sort of experience of powerlessness, like at that minute? Because you walked into AA, like, I guess the first thing I should ask you is, did you buy into AA?
I did. I bought into AA for the first 2.5 months. I was on that pink cloud. I felt incredible. I was 27 years old, And there was the spiritual principles were really kicking in, and
Yeah.
I was working a solid program for the first 2.5 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't associated. I had a new group of friends. All my
Yeah.
friends at that point, my new friends were AA guys, CA guys,
Yeah.
and my group of hooligan friends that I was the leader of weren't so happy with me.
Oh
I was
no.
no longer the leader of the charge of the party. Now I'm the quitter. I'm the guy that went to
Oh
AA,
yeah.
and so I took a lot of flack for that. And what happened was about 2.5 months into my first stint in AA,
Mm-hmm.
I got invited to my good friend who's now passed away. He passed away of an overdose about 4 years ago. It was his
Sorry.
birthday. And I remember there was 14 of us that went to his birthday at the Roxy nightclub in downtown Vancouver. And I think half the guys that I was with were like, "We're so proud of you, man. I can't believe that you quit drinking, you're not using." And like something inside me knew that night was going to be ugly. And I hadn't been out in 2.5 months. I hadn't gone to a nightclub or anything. I hadn't associated with myself really with any of my buddies that were, going hard.
Uh-huh.
And I remember it was last call, and this girl that I really liked.
Oh
she I,
no.
I'd lost probably 30 to 35, 40 pounds of alcohol weight.
Uh-huh.
And I was regaining my physical health, my mental health, everything was like I was feeling great.
Yeah.
And this girl jumped on me, and all of a sudden I was like, this girl likes me now all of a sudden. And I told her, I said, I can't. She goes, let's go do some shots. And I was like, I can't. I'm actually going to AA right now, and I'm an alcoholic. I got a drinking problem and a drug problem. I can't use. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, you don't. You're fine. There's no way. You just,
Oh
and,
no. Or were you like, oh no, you're right. Actually, we're good.
God,
Yeah.
her good looks and charm overrode the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize how severe it really was. And next thing right at closing time, I was really convincing and manipulative. I think I downed 4 beers in 10 minutes and 7 or 8 shots. And I remember looking across the bar at one of my buddies who cared, and he
Mm-hmm.
was just shaking his head at me like, what are you doing? And at that point right there, I was just like, I crossed the point of no return. And you know what? I didn't get the girl. She went
Oh.
home. And, it's just one of those things where, and that was my first stint in AA. And
Mm-hmm.
there was actually a bet going on between me and my buddy that went together. They bet that he would go out first before me.
Oh yeah.
And it took me almost a year to get back into the rooms. I quit drinking a few times in between, but there was some
Yeah.
relapses that weren't nice.
So were
But it
you
took
ever
me
like afraid to go back? Like you went back out,
absolutely.
right?
I
So
was
what
embarrassed.
so what was it like then when you finally went back?
When I finally went back, I realized how amazing the people in there, especially a lot of the people that really worked that program
Yeah.
to the letter,
Yeah.
from the heart, that love you unconditionally, no matter how bad or how far down the rocky road that you've fallen. And I was embraced and with nothing but love. Of course, there's judgment everywhere.
Of course.
And it did happen. There was a lot of people that wanted to see me fail, and that's okay,
Yeah.
because I got back in the saddle, and I strung a few. I think it was 3 years. I put 3 years together, and
Mm-hmm. In the program?
was feeling really good. I got out of the business. That was really hard. It was hard to get out of that business. Lie detector tests, guns to the head, the prison stuff. All the trauma that went
Uh-huh.
on with that business, and with the whole hockey culture, and then you add on that with the organized crime and concussions.
Mm-hmm.
I was a chronic relapser. I was a chronic relapser, and it took me God, I mean, I've had, I think, three good relapses since my first AA meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm coming up on 7 years, but these 7 years has not been exactly easy as well. I was prescribed benzodiazepams for my anxiety, not even knowing what the severity of a benzo really did to the brain. And up until about a year ago, um, I tapered off them almost, and I didn't realize, like, I was, unbeknownst to me, I had no idea how bad these things were for people. And I remember going into an AA meeting, and I was very transparent. And I was like, "Look, I haven't had a drink in almost 7 years. Well, I've been almost, like, it's a year ago, so it'll be 6 years. I'm coming up on 7 years, July 8th." And I remember, being very vocal and transparent in the meeting, saying, I had no idea. They talk about alcohol in pill form. I was prescribed clonazepam,
Mm-hmm.
Xanax, sleeping pills, Zolpicones and
So, and
whatnot.
was your doctor aware of your alcoholism?
He was full
Mm.
on. And he said, these are good for you. Don't abuse them. You'll be fine. And listen to your doctor was what I was always told. And,
Yeah.
even my parents are like, well, you better listen to your doctor. Well, 1 milligram of clonazepam turned into I needed two, and two turned into I needed three or four. And then I began, it became, I was dependent on them, and I couldn't believe it. And I actually got an apology from my doctor saying, I am so sorry that I prescribed these to you in the first place. I should have never prescribed these to you. And, that's one of those things. I mean, I'm off them now, and, thank God. But, the backlash on those is the fact that I was on them for quite a few years. And yes, I was abstinent from alcohol, but, it's one of those things, like, I got 7 years no drinking. And what I was going to say, when I came very vocal in the rooms there, I found out that, well, I got swarmed after the meeting, and about 75% or more people in that room were very honest with me, saying, oh, well, I'm on clonazepam, I'm on Xanax, I'm on Klonopin, I'm on this, I'm on that. And I was like, oh, wow. So I wasn't alone, that's for sure. And,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people in the sober community that are on, my good friend Brad McLeod there with Sober Motivation, people have reached out to me on there saying, I'm on 20 years with no drinking, but I've been on Xanax and
Mm-hmm.
Ativans and this and that. And, I think there was 50 plus million benzo prescriptions put out in the US last year alone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very common, very,
Yeah.
very common in the rooms
Yeah.
and outside the rooms. But, think twice for whatever the doctor says. The
Yeah.
doctor's not always right.
No, and I found that myself too, even like with things outside of addiction. Like, you really got to advocate for yourself and learn a little bit. But let's take a quick break. We're going to hear a word from tonight's sponsors, and then we'll look at a few comments.
Absolutely.
Now that I've left Prairie Sky, I just feel free from my addiction. Treatment saved my life. Prairie Sky Recovery saved my life.
All right. Let's see. So I just want to point out to everybody that Donna's camera is now working, because it stopped working when you were talking there a couple minutes ago. It turned off. So I got it back on. Oh, yay, Dan.
I see that the story's making Vincent nervous. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't help but telling the truth. I mean,
Mhm.
I could lie and be like, okay, well, I've never done benzos, and I've never, snorted coke,
And there was no guns
I
to
was
my
never
head, and there
abused
was no lie detectors and maximum
yeah, I was
security
never
prisons.
abused by
And
my hockey
my
coaches. I never
my
had concussions,
my
and
dad never
I've
buried
never.
millions of dollars in his backyard.
Yeah, and I didn't become a good boy right away, and
Yeah.
I did try it again, even like not that long ago. but that would be me lying. And I've been the manipulator, I've been the procrastinator. I own my stuff. That's the thing, is that, like, I'm here to be open and completely honest about everything in my life. When it comes to addiction and mental health, if I'm going to advocate for that and go across countries on my bike and and try to be a good example to other people, well, I have to show that I'm a human being too, that's been through human problems, even though we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So
that's why we do what
look,
we do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So look, I'm nervous a lot too. I'm not nervous doing this show, but I do have a lot of nervous dispositions. I suffer from the disease of alcoholism. I use drugs like an alcoholic, but like at the core root of my addiction, I am a true alcoholic. And that's why when we get into the topic of, say, benzodiazepams, I use benzos like I did alcohol. And, I had to come off them a lot differently, though. Like, alcohol for me was easy to quit. I haven't had the obsession to drink alcohol since that last stop, so to speak.
Yeah.
I was telling one of your guests there, Dan Carity, my last stint, I ended up in a local dive bar, for crying out loud. The last place I ever thought I would end up, because I was usually the high end partier. Now I'm in a place that opens up at 8 a.m. on East Hastings, and I got a bag of cocaine in my pocket, and I'm drinking with guys that probably were sleeping in a tent the night before. So, addiction doesn't have any. It's not like it picks you, or you pick it. It's just it happens out of nowhere, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I just burned my life to the ground.
Didn't even notice.
Yeah,
what else we got here?
I like to say, don't lose your sense of humor, and just be grateful that you made it out alive. Because realistically, by the grace of God, I'm still alive. But do I suffer still? Yeah, I do. We all suffer in the physical world. It's not an easy world that we live in, but it can be a lot gentler, even with the amplified emotions that we alcoholics and addicts, experience. Most of us, and they say frothy emotions, right? I'm a very emotional guy. I am. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, my heart on my sleeve, and that's why I feel compelled that it's important for me to talk about pills, benzos, painkillers, abuse, concussions, mental health stuff, all these things that play into the spectrum of addiction. You don't know why someone's walking down the street with no shirt on, ripped jeans, and panhandling. He might have had a really great life, and then something very traumatic happened to that person for that person to get to that point. And I believe the core root of a lot of addiction comes down to post-traumatic stress disorder. I was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and I had a guy a few years ago saying, "Oh, quit blaming everything on your PTSD. Quit doing all this, do that. You're blaming everything on your PTSD." Well, I'm sorry, but if you were abused, if you had gone through maybe certain trials and tribulations, and look, when you come down to trauma, it's everybody's trauma is different, but at the same time, one trauma can affect one person in one way that might not look as harsh on the outside to the other person. And then the other person is going through all this stuff, but maybe not suffering as bad, so to speak. But at the end of the day, trauma is trauma. And many people that have PTSD, complex PTSD, they don't know how to deal with it. And so what are the coping mechanisms for a lot of those people? Booze, drugs, alcohol,
drugs, sex, food,
gambling. Yeah. You never know.
Let's look at more comments.
And our good friend Barb chimes in here, says this is why we need more mandatory training in substance use for all medical colleges.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a fact. Back in the day when can you let go of your button, please? Thank you. It's like echoing in my ear. back in the day when Donna and I were on methadone,
Yeah.
you know, that was back when if you screwed up, you got kicked off the program, and that was your fault because you weren't trying hard enough. You know, and I still think that mentality exists in certain circles today. You know, have we moved forward from that in a lot of ways? Yeah, but it's not uncommon for people to be in a situation like yours where they're in recovery trying to heal, and the doctor thinks that they can throw stimulants at them or throw benzos at them or whatever. And it sort of blows me away that like there's such a small amount of training in addiction when it comes to medicine.
Well, what happened was he tried putting me on antidepressants, and he told me I had bipolar, and they didn't work. It was lithium that he started putting me on, and they made me feel awful. So then he tried putting me on some stuff. I mean, I was on it for maybe a week, but I was getting sick. These things did not make me feel, lithium pills, whatever. I guess they work for some people, maybe people that have bipolar, but they didn't work for me. That's when he prescribed the benzos. And
did you know what you were getting into when he prescribed them to you?
I had absolutely no idea. If I would have known, would be absolutely no way in heck that I would have ever taken those pills. Not a chance, because later on down the pipes, they had serious ramifications in my life, and they still, I still do feel the post-acute withdrawals, and it's been a little bit since I've been off these bloody things. And I'd like to be a huge advocate against these things for anybody out there that is getting prescribed Xanax or lorazepam or any sort of benzo. Say no, because there's easier, softer ways for sure. And
did you just say no? Is that like
I was at a treatment center in Malibu. This is a few years back, and I was taking maybe 2 milligrams of clonazepam a day. I'm in this treatment center in Malibu, and I thought everybody was in there for drinking. And this young kid was about 24 years old. And I was like, "How you doing? How many days now, bud?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm in here for benzos." And I was like, "What? Benzo?" I didn't even know what it was. I was like, "What do you mean benzos?" And he's like, "Oh, Xanax. I take like 14 a day." I was, and at that point right there, I was like, "Okay, clonazepams." I looked it up. Was a benzodiazepam. I'm like, "Oh my god!" And I had no clue.
Were you abusing them? Like, were you abusing them?
I wasn't abusing them, but it got to the point where I couldn't go a day without taking them. I needed to be like kind of relaxed, because a lot of my concussions really stimulated my amygdala, which is the fight or flight in my brain. And it calmed my brain down. My brain was like a hamster wheel, just spinning all the time with the anxiety, and then a lot of depression as well. That came, a lot of concussions and PTSD caused depression. And back in 2019, when I rode across Canada to help with raising awareness for mental health, my doctor, he prescribed me lithium again. He said, "I think you really should get on the lithium since you're going across Canada. Just give it a shot again." And I remember I hit Brandon. Right when I hit Brandon, I was it was like battery acid. It was bleeding through my skin. I was wearing a black shirt. I remember doing an interview with the Brandon radio station there, and it looked like I was wearing a camouflage shirt, but it was actually salt that was sweating out of my skin. It was the lithium. It's salt that comes from Bulgaria.
Yeah,
and
I hear that it can make your hair gray too, right? Lithium. I have a friend who's taken lithium for a long time, and he says that the gray salt and pepper in his hair is thanks to the lithium he was taking.
Well, after I saw that interview and the stuff was bleeding through my skin and it was making me feel awful, I threw them down the toilet, and I said, "There's no way I'm taking these things. There's no way. They're not helping me." And so I started taking the clonazepams again, and
Mm.
they did help. They helped, they helped kind of level me off a little bit. Coffee and a few clonazepam or two, whatever, going across Canada was
Mhm.
very, very stressful. I was doing 100 plus kilometers a day, sometimes 150, 200 kilometers a day. I set a goal for 2 months, and I wasn't going to not meet that goal.
Yeah.
And, having to do interviews with the CBC, CTV, whatever, I had to be on point. I had to be on. And, sometimes my anxiety would be off the charts.
So would you
And
take more? Like, would you just like chomp them down, or?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd chew them. I'd chew those bloody things. And I didn't think it was anything, I was doing anything wrong. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I'm not on antidepressants. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just one of those things. I was like, I was willing to do whatever it was going to take to get myself across the country.
Mhm.
And antidepressants weren't working. The lithium, whatever they were, like I said, they may work for some people, but they didn't work for me. And when I got back from that ride, I was introduced to someone at the Canadian Brain Performance Centre for concussions.
Mhm.
And my worst concussion was getting sucker punched outside a bar, not in hockey. And my head rang off the back of a curb. And I was out for 15 plus minutes.
Wow.
And suffered a very severe, I almost died. I mean, I was put in a neck brace, thrown in the back of an ambulance, taken to the hospital. And, this is back in, 2000, year 2000, maybe the summer of 2000, I think, somewhere around there, 99 or 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And, those are the days where there wasn't like the concussion protocol like there is nowadays. And I remember coming to, I'm at the hospital. I got a couple guys around me that I was partying with. They tell me what happened, sucker punched, head off the curb. I'm like, oh, I'm just thinking I got my bell rung.
Yeah.
And, within an hour or so, I had a straw in my nose and drinking again. And, things just
Like,
weren't right.
Hang on.
that.
Whoa, hang on. Straw in your nose drinking.
Yeah.
You were drinking through your nose.
No, I had a beer or a beer in my hand and a straw in my nose, and I was using and abusing.
Yeah. Sorry, I was maybe disconnected there
Yeah,
for
no
a second.
apologies needed.
Yeah.
I think I should apologize to myself.
Yeah. So tell me
But,
now. You found your way back to the rooms. You said you had like a solid 3 years in. Was this before you went on your bike across Canada?
it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it actually it was before. God, it was before I went over to Southeast Asia. I went over to Southeast Asia in 2012, and I was doing a film on happiness, and I had, I think, God, maybe a year and a half of sobriety at that point, and I was feeling really good.
With
I'm
your
over in Southeast
clonazepams?
Asia. No pill use or anything like that. Not back then. No, nothing.
Okay.
And I was very blessed. I got a phone call from a friend of mine, and she heard that I was doing a film on happiness, and she's like, well, why don't we shed some light on some negativity turned into some positivity, which is always great. And she was doing a bike ride across Cambodia to help with the eradication of human trafficking and child sex slavery. I had no idea about that business, how it was or anything, but it was a pretty rude awakening to something that was absolutely disgusting in this world that still goes on. It's a multi-billion-dollar business every year, and it's just perpetuated and gotten worse over the years.
Mhm.
And I said, yeah, I'm going to do it. And we filmed the whole ride within the film. And God, I got so close to those kids over there. I love kids. Anything I could ever do to help kids out and lead them in the right direction so they don't make their same mistakes as me. Every chance I can do that, I do. And in this particular case, we visited 5 different orphanages that held these, young girls that had been sold into sex slavery. Mm-hmm. And God, we rode across the country. And the day after that ride, I flew from Cambodia to Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I got a notice the next day from my father, who was back in Canada. saying that the Department of Homeland Security found out that I had done this ride, and the impossible became possible. I put out that rocket of desire, and yeah, I got a humanitarian pardon. They said I would never be allowed back in the States again.
Uh-huh.
And I got a humanitarian pardon for as a free man to be able to, for business and for pleasure.
So,
And
so for business, so did you start moving weight again across the borders?
no, I didn't. I actually
You said I could for business.
Oh yeah, lots of offers.
Yeah.
I did that. I did that ride a few years in a row. Went across Vietnam as well for that same purpose. And what happened was I started spending a lot of time in the U.S. too. I got a girlfriend down there in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles isn't for the faint of heart. And I was out of the business at that time too. And I'm thinking, I got all these millions, and I'm going to turn it legit. And I just made this positive film. I'm such a good guy now.
So hang on now. Did you bring some of that money with you into recovery?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there was a lot. When I got out of that business, there was millions and millions of dollars and lots of properties, and they're all gone. All gone now. God did not want me to have a cent of that money. And I lived off that money for a lot of years. I did. I'd be lying if I said no, I wasn't. I was a criminal, and
even in recovery.
In recovery for a little while, yeah. Until a gentleman smacked my BlackBerry out of my hand, and people weren't stupid. I was a young man when you're pulling up, with over $100,000 vehicle, and you got your boat, and you're living in the most expensive area in Vancouver at that, yeah, and not working a 9 to 5. People aren't stupid,
yeah.
And look. AA got me out of that business with a power greater than myself. The power greater than myself these days to me is Jesus Christ. I'm a man of faith. I'm a Christian. Now back then I was like, there's something greater than me needs me to stop doing what I'm doing and give back to society. You got to throw all this stuff aside and start, turn your life around, really. And
was it tough? Like, was it hard to you said you're living, you got all the property and all the cars, and did you sell it off, or was it hard to sell it off, or how did all of it go?
It started just falling away faster than you could snap a finger. And, I was giving out loans for $500,000. I was lending money, paying big guys' credit cards off. I was, the lifestyle didn't really change. I wasn't drinking.
Yeah.
But my spending habit was still very luxurious, so to speak. And my girlfriend at the time, when she first met me, she had no idea the amount of money that I had. But the closer we got, she started to kind of figure out that I wasn't poor. And but I still couldn't fill that hole of unhappiness that was inside me. Nothing could really fill that. Money could never fill it. I thought it could. It was instant gratification.
Yeah.
And things didn't work out between her and I, and I lost a lot within that relationship. So I had to sell a lot of properties and condos, and money started going a lot faster because I was miserable. Her and I broke up. I mean, I couldn't hug a woman for 2 years. I was so down in the dumps about that whole breakup. It was bad. I relapsed on NyQuil in LA. 3 bottles of big NyQuil. I remember running to the Walgreens because I lost a bunch of money on a legit business deal. I lost all of it. It was quite a bit. I won't get into the whole all the nooks and crannies of the deal because I'd be exposing a celebrity. But I was devastated, and I couldn't get out of bed. I was so depressed. I couldn't sleep, and she's out hiking, and it was no big deal. And I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God, what did I just do?" And I ran to the Walgreens because I couldn't sleep. I slammed back 3 bottles of NyQuil.
So why
and
Walgreens? Like, why not go get like liquor or like you know how to get things? Why NyQuil?
Well, Walgreens was in running distance,
Okay.
and I hadn't slept in days, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just have maybe like a few shots that'll knock me out. Well, that wasn't the case. It didn't work. So next thing you know, it's half a bottle. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, it's the full bottle. I had to knock myself out. It was sleep deprivation, and I was so like, I was a mess.
Yeah.
Like mentally, emotionally, everything. I was a disaster zone. And next thing you know, I've downed 3 bottles of NyQuil, and I'm out for about 2.5 so on days. I lost track. I don't know. I came to, and then got violently ill, getting upset to my stomach with red NyQuil coming out like a faucet. And, it sucked. That relationship didn't last much longer. I came home and tried to get my act straight. And, it wasn't easy. There was a few more relapses that happened after that too. And, I actually, I made a mistake. God, 6-7 years ago, I tried something in the marijuana industry again. I did a few times. I tried, but every time I tried, it failed.
Yeah.
And, it was, the universe doesn't want Ryan Phillips to be involved in marijuana. 100%.
So
that's for sure.
What was it then? You said like money didn't fill the void. The relationship, maybe it did fill the void, but when the relationship was gone, the void was there again. What is it about today? Like, what fills the void? Like, what makes you okay now?
I think having a small circle in my life and being able to give unconditional love and being able to have the capacity finally in my life to receive unconditional love. And if you can do that, and we're not, it's spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. And, I believe that, there is no coincidences. Everything really, truly does happen in divine order. And, I'm very, very blessed in my life in this moment to have some people that really do care for me. And it's not just family members. I'm closer to people at my church that, are always there to extend a hand out. Are you doing okay? Are you all right? They know about my addiction issues. They know about the stuff that I've done in organized crime, that I haven't always been the greatest person in the world. But today, I can honestly say that, yeah, I'm a sinner, but, I lay it all down to God, and look, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. And, all of my real brutal mistakes, so to speak, that has got me into trouble in this world, in this physical world that we live in, has always been a byproduct of substance abuse, whether it be an overinflux of alcohol and drugs, or even, taking some sleeping pills or the clonazepams. They mess with your brain chemistry. So, I'm super grateful to be alive and coming up on 7 years without a drink. But I'm not perfect. I've done things I'm not proud of, and I'm all about setting things right. And but number one is you got to set yourself right first. You have to be okay with you. And if you're not okay with you, as that unique, wonderful, full of love, born into this world, pure love being that you are. If you're not okay with that person, then it's going to be really hard for you to kind of, expand your life into something good, something wonderful, and achieve some dreams in your world, some goals that, puts meaning and purpose into your life rather than flushing it down the toilet like I was doing.
Yeah. If you're getting something out of this episode, please give it a like. If you're not subscribed to Hard Knox Talks, please hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing. We go live every Friday night, every Friday morning, every Sunday night. We got lots of episodes to watch. Ryan, where can people find you?
Well, I don't do Facebook, so I got on Facebook. I'm not. I'm on TikTok, but I barely go on there. But you know what? I'm easiest to find on Instagram. Instagram, it's the Ryan RyanPhillips Phillips official. The Ryan Phillips official on Instagram. And if you ever want to reach out or anything like that, I'm always anything I can do. And I can't reach out anybody. I mean, I get a lot of DMs, and I'll do my best always to get back to you, because I'm very passionate with helping others. That's I've really dedicated my life to helping people. I did enough destruction in my life, so now it's all about rebuilding not just my own life, but to help other people rebuild theirs as well.
Awesome. All right, Ryan, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Thanks for sharing your experience with us. Hang on, you guys. Here's a clip from next week's guest. Ryan, take care, my friend.
Take good care. I really appreciate having me on. Thank you.
I desperately want to believe that I can love my daughter out of addiction, but I know that her journey is separate from mine. I had to find the balance between caring for her, caring for the other people in my home, and caring for myself. I knew the little girl that I had raised was still inside of her. I have cried more than I would like to admit, slept more than I would like to admit. I have not always been brave. Choosing to walk this journey with her, there's days that I can, there's days that I need motivation to keep going, and there's days that I can't. And only one of those are non-negotiable to me, and that's the days that I can't. Because I know that I can't pour from an empty cup.
Say, this is Hard Knox Talks.